We are going to talk about Gaia-X. I don't know anything about Gaia-X, so this is why I'm here. And I'm going to let these people to explain who they are and what they are going to talk about.
Thank you. Merci. Bonjour à tous. So I introduce myself. I'm Alban Schmutz, in charge of strategic development and public affairs for VH Cloud, and also member of and proud founding member of Gaia-X. I will animate this panel, so that's why I'm talking first here. So and just before letting my other teammates introducing themselves, just a few words regarding Gaia-X. So you probably read the press. So Gaia-X is today probably the most important cloud project across Europe. So we have more than, I would say, 300 companies that has joined as a member of the organization, and we'll come back to the topic since the community is even larger. And the topic is how Gaia-X today reshapes the cloud topic in Europe, since it has been developed as, I would say, not only a technical but also a project with a highly political support in various European member states. And we'll have the opportunity to show you today and to answer some of your questions on what is Gaia-X, how does it work, and how to get involved, and what are the, I would say, the deliverables within Gaia-X. And before entering that, all those questions, I'd like to ask my panelists to introduce themselves, so you know who is whom and what are they doing within Gaia-X. Maybe Anne-Sophie, you can introduce yourself?
Yes. Is it working? Yes. So I'm Anne-Sophie Taillandier. I'm working at IMT. We are one of the founding members of Gaia-X. We are part of several committees within the Gaia-X ISBL, but probably we will explain that after that. And we are also part of the French hub of Gaia-X to animate and bring some ecosystem from France within Gaia-X.
Thanks, Anne-Sophie. Emma?
Yeah. Hi, welcome everyone. My name is Emma Wehrwein. I'm coming from Germany. I'm working for ECO, the Association for the Internet Industry in Germany. And my role in Gaia-X, I'm working on a funded project, open source project for the Gaia-X Federation services, the technical elements of Gaia-X.
Pierre?
Hi, my name is Pierre. I've joined Gaia-X in March as its CTO.
That's quite a good summary. Straightforward. Pierre is straight to the point, and that's good to have you.
But your title is CTO Gaia-X.
Correct.
Yes. You are the CTO of Gaia-X.
Correct.
Yeah. So maybe just to explain a bit. So we're going to come back on the organization, but Gaia-X has a non-profit association. Where there are lots of people member of, and there is a permanent team, and therefore Pierre is CTO of the permanent organization, and therefore CTO for the consortium as well. Thanks for this introduction. Maybe for the room which is not necessarily comfortable about Gaia-X, and I think this is one of the important things today. Maybe Pierre, can you tell us a bit more about what are the objectives of Gaia-X?
Yes.
This is very clear.
Super communicant.
So
you are also in charge of communication, right?
No. My role will be to operationalize Gaia-X. So Gaia-X, that's a European initiative where we try to foster, to promote the development of a software stack that enable to expose services to allow participants of an ecosystem, supplier, consumer, to take a decision to gain control over their IT services and data. We have, I can go for, we are basing the association, and all the things that we are doing are based on the European value that are confidentiality, privacy, portability, self-determination, and we embed that at the core of the framework. It means that to promote, for example, adjectives when the user selects services such as trust and sovereignty, we need to have transparency of the information and verification of the information themselves. So this is what we are working on. And for doing that, we have 3 deliverables: specification, source code, and labels.
Thanks, Pierre. So I think this is a great, I would say, operational view of what we do within Gaia-X. But I'd like to maybe to ask Anne-Sophie, what is, I would say, the broader political view around Gaia-X, and what do we expect regarding, I would say, the interest for users, since here we developed Gaia-X to serve the interest of users of cloud services across Europe?
So the idea within Gaia-X is also in a business side. So we want to avoid locking for users or enterprises, companies within a cloud system. So the idea is also to have, as Pierre said, facilities so we can compare offers, so we can switch from an offer to another one. So the question is also on the topic of interoperability and portability at the cloud level, but also at the data level. We want to have data spaces on many domains and enough data so we can develop new products or services on data that bring European value. I mean by that for example, if I'm talking about health or industry, we want a kind of free flow of data within the different partners so they can exchange data and have a market of data so they can develop new products and services. So this is a question of dependency. This is independency, the question of being bringing a European product, I mean, based on European values. So this is why we are talking about European values and much more about trust. That means also to build these services on data on which we trust, on data we have exchanged. So on the business side, so it's at the cloud level, I would say, by allowing companies to switch from one cloud to another one, knowing the cost, getting the federation services in an open source way, being able to develop this interoperability and portability, and at the data level, building data spaces on many domains that are interoperable and on which we can exchange the data and build these new products.
Thanks, Anne-Sophie. So you mentioned the topic of open source as being, I would say, part of the composition of what we do within Gaia-X and building a community. Maybe Emma, can you give us a sense of how is it important to have an open source community for Gaia-X?
Yeah, sure. I mean, the whole Gaia-X initiative is built on a community approach. There are already, as you said in the introduction, a lot of people working for free and with a lot of resources on this project. And of course, open source is really close to this thought of a community approach. And right now, there are 2 funded projects, one from the German side, one from the French side. And we are also targeting to work really close together on, building and implementing open source code for everyone out there that wants to initiate or set up their own federation based on the Gaia-X concept. So this is, of course, what we are working on. And right now we started in the beginning of this year. And just for the jump start, so we will have the first alpha release in the mid of next year. And then, of course, the plan is to open it to the open source community. So right now we are also working on hackathons. Maybe you can also give an update on that. We had the first hackathon a couple of months ago. The next one will be in December. And so we are really also targeting on building an open source community to further work on the federation services and to involve everyone.
So maybe if I may summarize what I've heard here regarding the objectives of Gaia-X. Gaia-X is a framework to put in place, I would say, standards, technical standards according to European values that enables cloud users to, I would say, create value out of the sharing of data and being able to move from one provider to another to give fluidity on the cloud market and to give, I would say, the full potential of cloud services across Europe. And what has not been mentioned here, but it's also a framework which is I would say, based on European value, meaning that anyone abiding by these values, but not necessarily being European, are welcomed within the Gaia-X framework. So just to make the 3 points here, having the open source at the core. Maybe the next point I'd like to address with all of you and to give a sense to the audience of what is Gaia-X. We've seen the objectives. Maybe we have to come back also to what's the organization. So what is Gaia-X about and how it's working? So maybe, Pierre, could you describe us how it's working? I would say the architecture with the committees. So that's very important and very, I would say, lots of people working there. So maybe can you give us an overview on how it works on the field there?
Sure. So the organization, it started with 22 founding members. We have about 310 members now. The organization is pretty straightforward in a hierarchy model. We have a board of directors at the top, management team composed of CEO, CTO, CFO, and COO. And then 3 committees. The committees are responsible, have 3 areas of expertise. The policy rules committee, taking care of the policy rules. The data space business committee, taking care of the ecosystem data, creating value of data sharing. And we have the technical committee. I'm chairing the technical committee. And under the technical committee, there are several, again, working groups with sub-working groups and so on, like 3. Each working group has a clear scope and also out-of-topic items. There are a list of required skill sets to enter some of the working groups to make sure that the working groups work in an efficient way, with a list of deliverables and I will say pretty standard set of KPIs and critical success factor description. Yeah.
Thanks, Pierre, on this. And maybe going down to each of the, I would say, of the committees and on the intents there. Maybe, Anne-Sophie, can you give us a view on what's going on in the data spaces field? So explaining what are data spaces, how it works, and what are the deliverables there?
Yes, so as I said, so data spaces are specific on many domains. As you can understand, so Gaia-X is a European initiative, so we have some data spaces in France, but we have also data spaces in Germany and everywhere in Europe, Italy, Spain, etc. So the idea also, so we have the hubs, the French hubs, the German hubs, etc. So within the hub, we want to link the initiative to build big data spaces. So, and within the DSBC, Data Space Business Committee in Gaia-X, we are sharing knowledge around these data spaces because they are all facing the same kind of issues at the compliance level, governance level, but also technical or business. So at the DSBC level, we are building like guidelines, documents, so we can work and build knowledge on the top of the data spaces we are building currently. And within Policy Rules Committee, so I'm also part of the Policy Rules Committee, just to say for you, so as you probably or not know, so we had the first version of the Policy Rules document that was published in
what
summer.
What are policy rules? Sorry, but no one knows.
Yeah. So the policy rules are the kind of code of conduct in which we have all the basic rules that will manage the way we present things within Gaia-X. I'm not sure I'm clear, but no. As an example, we have in the policy rules a link to the GDPR to say that GDPR rules are the base of Gaia-X. As an example, but you have also on portability, on interoperability, on the way things are being built with extraterritorial non-European laws, for example. So these documents is a set of rules that are governing, I don't know the word, that are managing the Gaia-X spirit, I would say.
So if I understand you properly, so the job of the Policy Rules Committee is to transform into verifiable requirements the European values.
Voilà, thank you, Alban.
So for the sake of transparency, I'm also vice chair of this policy rules committee.
Yes. And we published the first version of the policy rules document in summer 2020, I think. And we had an open consultation by fall 2020. Then we had a second version of the document published in spring 2021. And currently we are working on the feedbacks we had from this open consultation. So everything we are talking about right now are living documents, architecture, policy rules documents, what we've done through the DSBC, because they are living documents, because things are evolving with the time.
So when you talk architecture of a document or policy, it's not a technical architecture.
So we will. So this will be one of. So the next question, maybe just to summarize here, so you understand that in the three committees we have in Gaia-X, one is taking care of the data spaces. So basically, how to address vertical markets in the question of healthcare, financial services, aerospace industry, space, I would say automotive and other things like that, to coordinate, so to have, I would say, verticals working together to share data and to coordinate all this to issue all the best practices out of this. The second committee is being the policy rules committee, which brings operational requirements to I would say, the European ambitions and values which Gaia-X has been developed for. And we have the technical committee, and I will let maybe Pierre explain how it is working, also and also maybe to give an overview on the overall operational model that has been developed within Gaia-X. I think this is something very on the field and very important to explain here to show how we work for real. So I think this is very important.
So to answer your question and also to reply to Emma's about the hackathon, indeed we have the architecture of standards and the reference architecture document that are technical specifications on how to build ecosystems. The operating model is there to show how those ecosystems that are autonomous will be able to find themselves. That's for the purpose of creating data spaces to exchange data. And what will be the governance model applied to that? Part of the open source, and that we'll be able to elaborate on that later. Open source is one thing. The governance model of an open source ecosystem, that's something different that needs to be handled also. I would like to mention two things. Indeed, we have a hackathon beginning of December that we are using to validate the hypotheses that are being made in the specification. And those events are technical events open to everyone. So all the architecture that we've described before are for the members only, as kind of a benefit to be able to participate to the specifications. And we also have a way for anyone outside of GaiaX membership to also come and contribute, technically speaking, to the deliverable. On the operating model, to make it short, the main point is again about transparency. We want to make sure that when a participant exchanges data, we talk a lot about data. I will try to give a more concrete example. So chaining data being a service, you can also chain services. Chaining services, it means that you need to be able to compose services, to take one like a data pipeline, but deploy it across different cloud providers. If you want to do that, you need to be able, what is the identity schema of each cloud provider? Where is the data going to be located? Who is going to be able to access my data? And all those criteria are elements that needs to be described in the catalog of services. And the governance model is there to make sure that when we say a service is GaiaX compliant, it is really GaiaX compliant, and people can have trust and rely on that.
So I think so. The question of trust is something quite interesting. Just for your information, I think this is something that is good to know as well. So since this is in the press since yesterday, I will talk a bit about that. But Gaia-X, so we have the Gaia-X summit next week. So I invite you to join there. and part of will be presented there also Gaia-X labels in order to be able to give, I would say, enhanced visibility and trust to services declared within Gaia-X. So being compliant with all, I would say, the models that Pierre has been describing, but also the policy rules and expectation from coming from the users in the Data Space Business Committee to be able to have layers of labels to be sure that everything is demonstrate compliant and with I would say levels of certainty there. So as this will be an announcement of next week, I will not go deeper in that discussion. But what is important here is being compliant with Gaia-X is fulfilling basically the requirements from the technical committee. So and I would say especially the technical expectation of a service, how it's described, how it is presented within the Gaia-X, and also the standards it's abiding to. But it's also referring to what is coming from the policy rules, and I would say the way it's showing compliance to European values regarding transparency, regarding non-European extraterritorial regulations, for example, but also cybersecurity, data protection, portability of data, and a few other stuff. So all this together to demonstrate that being part of Gaia-X is not only being part of an association and developing together, but it's also being able to declare services and to have the recognition that such services are fulfilling a certain numbers of rules that the community agreed to build together here. Maybe on this topic, so within the technical committee there are various working groups. I will come back to that afterwards, but I'd like to ask Emma regarding the federated services, which is something very important in Gaia-X, since you have understood that Gaia-X is taking care about creating added value out of sharing data between businesses, but it's also about fluidity on the market and having, I would say, the ability to move from one provider to another. And within Gaia-X, we developed the federated services in order to be able to make it possible. So maybe Emma, could you explain us how it's working and what are we currently doing within Gaia-X towards that question?
So yes, the federation services. You can think of the federation services as let's say a toolbox that is in the end filled with open source code of concerning microservices, and we separated or we divided the federation services in 4 key areas. The first one is identity and trust. It's of course really important, especially in the digital world, to know who you're talking to and with whom you're doing your contracts concerning your data. So we are focusing on SSI within Gaia-X. That's one big goal for Gaia-X as well.
Self-sovereign identity.
Self-sovereign identity and the ID. And then we have a second one, it's the federated catalog that we are working on. Of course, you need to think if you have your federation, you want to set up to follow a specific business case or your business model. You will find your partners to have one federation. Of course, in some way, you also need to share your services or your offers with other partners in the federation. So, of course, you also need one catalog where you have your self-descriptions of your services, so other partners can browse through and find the services that they want to use. And then we have the area of data sharing, data exchange in a sovereign way. This is also something that we are working on within the federation services, especially also in the first place, how you can negotiate data contracts through the net. And then the fourth part is compliance. It's also, of course, really important. It's one promise of Gaia-X, right? So, we are also focusing there on an onboarding and accreditation workflow, for example, for each federation, and also a continuous automated monitoring. Because, of course, you also need to monitor if everyone is still compliant to what they promised in the beginning. So yeah, these are the 4 areas, and in the end, all of these microservices will help to have a really efficient way of working together in one federation and to build trust also in the digital world for one federation.
Thanks, Emma. Maybe one question on this to Pierre. So Emma, you mentioned of, I would say, verifying trust. Maybe, Pierre, can you give us a view on how do you want to, or do you expect to automate that process within Gaia-X?
I know the answer, it's just I'm trying to... So...
we hope that he knows the answer.
Automated trust, it's something that is complex because you basically trust is a risk assessment of someone being able to do something, and that's something that the user have to do. We cannot deliver trust for the user. Neither we can for sovereignty. We cannot buy 1 liter of trust, 2 kilos of sovereignty and have that delivered. We can promote transparency, and then the user take an educated decision for their need. Verifying identity, it's something that is a challenge for many years now, and we do have, for example, in the what Emma mentioned, SSI, self-sovereign identity. That's again the ability to. That's a framework that is also supported by the European Union. So European Union, you might have heard about IDAS version 2, that will promote also SSI. That as a citizen, you can have your own identity and carry your identity with your credentials from one place to another, and you, in a sovereign manner, you being human but a service or any type of thing, can decide which type of attributes you release to the outside. So you are in control of what you reveal to someone who asks you credentials, to ask you to log into a portal, to use a service. That's what SSI means. And SSI, to answer technically to the question of how we build that, that's based on, we are adopting the specification from the W3C, in terms of DID, verifiable credentials, verifiable presentation. So we base ourselves on that, and that's proven to work so far.
Yeah, so thanks for the answer, Pierre, here. What I wanted to have you understand as well is that we define a set of criteria that will be verified against, I would say, third-party verification, third-party audits, for example, on certain topics, for example, on cybersecurity or data protection, and Gaia-X will, I would say, inherit all this and check automatically if a service is doing what it's claiming to do. And this is very important. So I think this is one of the very interesting added value within Gaia-X if we want to bring automation to process where today you are asking, I would say, manually your provider to show a certification or to show a certificate of the certification, etc., etc. Here we want to, I would say, to build more or less something that could be a one-stop shop on this, and based on automation, where we will do, I would say, automated verification by Gaia-X on things we can do, or by Gaia-X through third parties, where there are trusted third parties to jump into the loop.
It's important also that when we are doing this automation, that we don't read from the legal framework that we have in Europe. So as a summary, I would say that we promote a lot digital governance.
So maybe to come to the next point. So sorry for this roundtable to be short, but so Gaia-X is an endeavor where you can spend lots of time. So if you have free time and you want to contribute, you will be welcomed. And that's why I wanted also that we can give you some points to understand how to contribute to Gaia-X, how do we deliver on the field, and maybe, so in my view, there are 3 main ways to do things. So within the Gaia-X ISBL, we develop what is named work packages. There are national hubs, so we have a French hub of Gaia-X, but there is a German hub, there is an Italian hub, there is lots of hubs across Europe and even outside Europe now. But there are also other national funded projects, I would say, beside all this. So we'll give you an overview on all this. Maybe to start, Pierre, how can members join, so people in the room can join Gaia-X, become part of the official work packages of Gaia-X? How does it work?
So part of the official work packages of the association, you will have to apply for GaiaX association membership. And then we will have a internal onboarding in one or many of the working groups, depending on what are the area of interest.
So just interrupting you, just regarding joining, so it's joining the Gaia-X ISBL, which is a non-profit organization based in Belgium. And I would say fees, since it was always a question, is depending on the size of the company. Sorry.
Thank you. And there is another way also to join, as we said before, the open work package, open to everyone, not necessarily association members, they cannot work on the specification, but they can work on the source code of the implementation, and also join, for example, the GXFS that Emma is representing here.
So how many work packages, open work packages are there in Gaia-X?
7.
So 7 in the technical committee, right?
So we have the 3 committees. Under the 3 committees, under the technical committee, we have 6 working groups. Some working groups have even like specialization. Like we have a provider working group that has a specification with infrastructure interconnection. And in terms of open work package, we have about 7 of them. Point to be understood, the open work package are not driven by the association, so are self-organized. And they are even free to say that they are working or not on GaiaX. So that's why I'm saying about 7, because they disappear. They have their own life cycle, let's say. In that way, that's very transparent. I mean, that we don't, it's not a closed world.
So, thanks for this short overview. Maybe
Emma wants to add something on the GXFS and how to join.
Yeah, of course, I can also add something on the GXFS. So for the project, I would just talk about the German-funded project. Of course, you can then add on the French part. It's right now. It's a. Of course, you need to understand it's a funded project, so it's tax money, a lot of tax money. So of course, we need to have a formal procedure in the beginning. But the idea is really to have a jump start. So right now we are working.
Just interrupting you. Maybe I will introduce what does it mean. I think people are less used than we are here about this. So basically, on the to speed up the work within Gaia-X, there are some projects that are funded by member states, so by France, by Germany, and maybe others, to bootstrap some of the work, the open source work of Gaia-X. And I would say one of so the first topic being funded was regarding I would say federated services, and the one Emma is talking is about the project started in Germany. So I'm handing I would say the mic back to you, but just to explain what we are talking about here. So there are other funded projects, but here it's to bootstrap the topic on federated services.
Yeah, perfect. Thanks. So yeah, as I said, we started in January, and right now we started a European-wide open tender. So everyone who wanted to show their interest could submit their interest and to really be the partner on a contractual basis to actually do the first code. But we are close to ending this phase. So in the next, I would say, 2 or 3 weeks, we will start implementing the first code. For the individual services I explained to you earlier. And after the alpha release is published, we will work, of course, also through the whole process with Pierre and the CTO office to set up a GitLab repository from the ISBL, and then, of course, it's going to be managed in an open source manner and with the open source community behind it. So I would say of course, you can join, contribute in the hackathons for sure. As I said, December or next year, we will also have a big Federation Services hackathon only concerning the Federation Services. So you're, of course, invited to join there. And then, of course, we will hope, of course, also with the help of Pierre, to find the way to really introduce it to the open source community for Gaia-X, and then of course everyone is invited. But right now we need to also have the formal procedure with the funded money to have the partners in the beginning.
So just for this for everyone, so the German government put 15 million euros to bootstrap the federated services for, I would say, on the German side, and on the French side, part of the strategy on the cloud computing announced by Minister Cédric O a few days ago. There is another project funded from 15 million as well that has been presented, but from the French side. And maybe, Anne-Sophie, can you give us a word on this since you are heading the consortium there?
Yeah, so it has been announced last week and it has not started yet, probably beginning of next year. We are already working closely with Emma, Andreas Weiss, and Pierre Grandlier, so the French part will be in completion from the German one. The idea is not to reinvent the wheel and redo the work. We have enough to do. But the idea is also to bootstrap it from here and to bring also some open source codes. And as you say, it's just an acceleration of development in order to, for you and for the open source community to continue to contribute on these first elements we will develop in French side. So it will be a 24 months project starting beginning of next year.
So basically, it's all this is about developing open source code to provide reference implementations of the architecture developed by Gaia-X. Maybe there's another way to get involved is regarding national hubs, and I think this is something very important. So not everyone wants to be part of Gaia-X ISBL, and maybe Anne-Sophie, since you are part of the managing committee, or I don't know the word in English for the French hub. Maybe can you explain what is the role of the hubs in the Gaia-X architecture at national level, and how it works, and especially how it works in France?
Yes, so as we said before, so at the cloud level, it's much more at the ISBL level with Pierre and with the different committees and with the different open source projects. When we are talking about data spaces, so it works through hubs. So we have national hubs all around Europe. So and the French hub is run by the CIGREF and with the Pôle Systématique, with Académie des Technologies, Numéum, IMT now, and INRIA. And the objective, the aim of these hubs is much more to work on the data spaces, to animate the community, to have many companies working in it, to share knowledge, to help these data spaces to emerge, and to connect them with other initiatives in other countries. So we have, I think that we have 600 contributors within the French hub right now. So that means that we have much more companies than the one we have in Gaia-X. It's free, it's open communities. If you are interested, please, we have a website, I don't have it now, but you can contact the CIGREF, Henri Dagrin or Marine de Sury, and they will make the link. But I mean, at the ISBL, it's much more on the cloud. Now you understand the X of Gaia-X. So the X at the bottom, it's at the cloud level, and the X at the bottom, at the top level, is on the data spaces. So at the bottom, it's much more on the ISBL and Gaia-X. At the top, it's much more data spaces, and it's going through a lot the hubs.
So by the way, I have a question because I browsed on the internet to see what was the acronym of Gaia-X. I found several, so if you can give me one.
Just based on the goddess of Earth, that's all.
Global?
Goddess.
The goddess of Earth in the Greek mythology.
I had global access to the internet for all, global automated information access. And the official one is?
Gaia-X.
Gaia-X.
There is no. So it's not.
Sorry,
it's
there
not
was no
an acronym of a project.
jokes there.
Is it a German word?
No.
Because it's not a French one.
No, it's
No.
Greek.
It's
Greek.
the name of the deity, la déesse de la terre,
The
I
goddess.
think it's the
goddess of Earth.
So.
chaos, I think.
So maybe it's time.
Manque de culture.
Maybe it's time to open the floor to questions, since we could spend a couple of hours.
Maybe
more on this.
I can start with another question regarding the licensing, because in open source we have different licenses, like GPL, etc. Regarding the data now, this is a subject I look inside. It is really difficult to find licenses for data. I remember we have something like the open data, but it was not, in my opinion, useful. So can you elaborate on that?
So on the data, GaiaX is not restricted to open data. Data is attached with terms and conditions, and it's within the terms and conditions of the data owner that they will specify what are the usage rights.
No, the idea here, it's not to work on open data. Not only, I mean, we could have open data, but if we want to build these data spaces, we have to work on private data. Okay. And if we want to work on private data, so then you have to have a kind of data usage control. Otherwise, the data provider won't open the data.
Just to give an example here, for example, how will Volkswagen share data with Renault or with Valeo, which is in another part of the value chain? So and will remain and will keep the control of its data, but may be able to share added value with some other community members. So the question is about not having this open to everyone, but it's also to create value out of this data inside a closed world. So that's why we need to be able to have those rules to be clear and clearly inherited from the data owner. So it's really on the field, and to do it for financial services, regarding healthcare data, etc. Each kind of data are not supposed to be open. So there is lots of room for open data, but the aim of Gaia-X is not only about open data, it's creating value out of data, whether they are open or not.
Maybe to add on this as well, I think, I'm not sure if you would agree, but the highest goal of Gaia-X, and I think this should be clear, is really to foster innovation in Europe. So it's not really, of course you need data, because I mean that's the future. Data is the future, and of course in Europe in the last
This is where is the money.
Pardon?
This is where is the business.
The business is on the user side, of course, people should share data to think of new digital business models. So the idea is really to foster also the community out there to really get into it and to really think of how data can be used and how maybe even different sectors can work together, as Alban said in the beginning. So the idea is really not to focus on open data, but really to foster innovation, and this is by explaining how to use data.
And maybe we were unclear in the presentation since we didn't mention it, but out of those 300 members, I would say most of the members are what we could say cloud users, not necessarily cloud providers. So it's not a community of providers. Yeah. It's really a community of users and providers with big users like, I don't know, Siemens, Volkswagen, Enel in Italy, Airbus, EDF in France, and lots of others. Very, I would say, big names, big users. And to work together also with smallest users, so less known people, but as important as well, and to build together a community where the technical side delivers what is expected by the business side, and that's very important.
I propose we open the question to the people in the room. Good.
Okay. Hi. You spoke about GaiaX compliance, and how can we confirm that some entity is GaiaX compliant? Is there an audit or something like that, just to be sure that?
Yes. So the first iteration, the source code I'm writing right now is to deliver the first API endpoints where you will be able to submit your service description and get back what we call a verifiable credentials, so a signature coming from the service point saying this is GaiaX compliant or not. This is a 3-month period where we need to have it's like TDD, test-driven development. We want to work in a very iterative approach. I'm not going to use the buzzword agile. Iterative approach with test-driven development. You put your service description, we also learn from that, and we go through all the compliance. The compliance in 3 points, that's making sure that all the mandatory attributes that we've talked about transparency are there. The signature that assess that you really are the one that issues those claims. My car is red. Well, the car is really red. And who signed that? Is it the car owner or just a passenger? And the data consistency. If you have, when I'm saying, for example, the car is red, that's a triple store. That's if you put that with an engine, with the number of doors, you have a knowledge graph, and you start to build a knowledge graph. When you put data in a knowledge graph, you can also verify that the data is consistent with that knowledge graph. Another example, service location. So where is the service located, and what is the jurisdiction of the provider? That needs to be consistent also. That's part of the compliance.
So, so this will be the case. So this is not. So there is no Gaia-X services already compliant to Gaia-X, since we are already. Pierre is coding and not necessarily alone, but so the question here. So we are putting this in place, and this is how it will be working. I would say very shortly, but we are in the process to do it, and afterwards we'll be able to derive from that stamps, so labels saying that okay, this service is Gaia-X compliant.
And to add also, the Gaix compliance, we are not going to put compliance on just a piece of software. We need to know who is operating it, what is where it's located, where it's going to be located. So it's not a piece of code that we say, and every instances of a piece of code is Gaix compliant. That's really, from a user point of view, what is going to be consumed.
Yeah, thank you. I wanted to just riff on what Philippe was saying about the licensing for data, but more about coding, and Pierre, all that coding you have in front of you. Given what Anne-Sophie said about there's going to be a third version of the policy rules document, is it perhaps the case of sort of chicken and egg, without knowing what's going to be in that document, might act as a brake on potential coders coming forward to help in an open source way? Or is there enough there in that document which you feel that is reassuring, so that you've got that OSI, FSF recognized licensing, you've got the governance suitable to ensure that that kind of potential in the upstream communities is really unleashed and unlocked to further the interests of Gaia-X? Thanks.
Couldn't get the question, sorry. Whether the question is what type of licenses do we allow for services?
Yeah, so I mean, whether there's sufficient clarity about what open source means within the context of Gaia-X to help facilitate the decision making if coders are going to get involved in this in a community way. Thanks.
Two different, I believe, artifacts: the policy rules document, and for example, the GXFS. GXFS, that's going to be open source software. We are still hesitating between two types of licenses. Yeah,
it's a working process.
Yes, it's a working process.
So regarding what's
but those the license, the open source license applied to the implementation of the GXFS doesn't have impact on the policy rules document.
No, it's completely different.
On the policy rules document, so basically what you have inside is a series of high-level objectives. So, so what are the objectives we want to derive from what are European values? So in terms of transparency, so do you display all the extraterritorial, so non-European extraterritorial regulation your service is abiding to, for example? So you provide transparency here. So we have high-level objective on regarding data protection, cyber security, etc., which are derived from the GDPR, which are derived from the Cyber Security Act and the ongoing work from ENISA regarding the European Cyber Security Scheme for Cloud. So all these are high-level objectives that are, I would say, clearly stated. And what we do is also what we identify what are the tools that are recognized to be able to demonstrate your compliance against one of these requirements, so it will be part of a matrix that will be, I would say, published also I would say, in relation with labels. But basically, for example, regarding data protection, you will be able to demonstrate that you fulfill the data protection requirements if your service is declared under a code of conduct validated by the European Data Protection Board, and that a third party certified that you are fulfilling this code of conduct, and such a third party being within the GDPR, what we call the monitoring body, but could be I would say, so an independent third party. It could be EY certified point or Bureau Veritas or others, for example, to show you the stream here on cybersecurity. To take another example, it could be, for example, once the ENISA scheme will be in place, if a third party within the scheme of ENISA gives the trust that, okay, you fulfill all the requirements, then it will be translated to Gaia-X, so you fulfill the cybersecurity requirement with Gaia-X. So on the policy rules level, this is pretty simple.
And just to say that all these documents, you can find them on the all these documents you can find them on the Gaia-X website. They are published, so if you're interested in, you just have to see that. So you've got the architecture document, you've got the policy rules document, you've got many documents on the website.
Next question.
Okay, there is the Solid initiative pushed by Tim Berners-Lee. I'm sure you know about it. There is also the IDS initiative in Europe, in Germany. And how does GaiaX fit into that picture, and what does it bring to the table?
So IDS, so International Data Space Association, yeah. So I'm part of it since 5 years. IMT is the French hub of IDSA as well. So we are working together with the IDS connector, with all the concepts from IDS. IDSA is a founding member of GaiaX, and there is a data business alliance that has been announced a few weeks ago, with BDVA, Gaia-X, IDSA, and Fireware. So there is a strong relationship in between IDSA and Gaia-X, and they are part of Gaia-X. And there is an alliance, and now we have workshops, internal workshops, so they're not open workshops, but just to converge on the architecture level, because we have an architecture on IDSA, we have the architecture of Gaia-X, and they are compatible. They are compatible. We have to find a way to merge these architectures.
We try to be lazy and reuse the work of the others.
And basically, that's in Gaia-X, not to redo what's already been done by someone else. Maybe last question.
Yes, thank you for the talk. I'll be quick because. So I had a question, thank you, about the main purpose of Gaia-X. Apologies because I missed the beginning of the presentation. If so, you might just tell me. My question is, as we talk more about sovereignty in the space, right? All of us are aware of that. And my question was, what is to you the key thing that will make Gaia-X successful compared to the American hyperscalers, which are in heavy use today? We mentioned, I think Pierre mentioned a bit about the industry thing. Mm-hmm. A lot of the industry is already using such solutions. We had in one of the plénières this morning examples of how within the French administration such solutions are sometimes unfortunately also promoted. Where do you see Gaia-X succeeding in this space?
I think it's a good question, and I'd like all the panelists to answer it as a conclusion. So Pierre, what's your view on that?
So my view on sovereignty, you can apply sovereignty on kingdoms, state empires. You don't apply sovereignty on zip file and virtual machines. So you have data sovereignty that will be translated to data access control usage right. You have digital sovereignty that can be translated by open source, portability, identity control. You have technology sovereignty, like knowing who provides the solution. Where is it located, and probably who operates that, more importantly. So where is the license coming from, who sells you the license. And you have jurisdiction sovereignty. This is more for the states, whether or not you have laws from outside of your country that applies to your services located in the same country. There are various ways of sovereignty definitions. All of them are answered, requires to have information and transparency. So this is my bottom line. GaiaX promote transparency, verified information, so that the user can take their decision.
Maybe, Emma, the other part of the question is, what is a success for Gaia-X? So what's your view?
So maybe I also would like to add what Pierre was saying, sorry, but I think something that's also really important is that we also said in the beginning is really that we are also working on the freedom of choice, right? So that's, I think, also the difference to the hyperscaler. So we are working really also on the technical basis to not have vendor lock-ins, to really, you can decide to use this provider this day, and in 2 days you can just switch and change it. And I think that's really a success factor for Gaia-X.
And Sophie?
So this is a big question to say that what would be why we make Gaia-X successful. I say that Gaia-X is very young, even if we're talking about Gaia-X since like 2 years. I mean, Pierre was hired like 6 months ago. Yeah, okay. And I think that now Gaia-X, the challenge for Gaia-X is to deliver, and there is a strong expectation behind that, and it's young. So all the questions we had are very important questions, like the license, the way we will publish open source, and why we are here also today. It's just to be sure that people and everyone understand that Gaia-X is based on open source. So we have to bring the open source community within Gaia-X. We have to bring values to show the value and to animate this ecosystem also and to bring it. So yeah.
So. I think we are already over time for 10 minutes. So I wanted to thank you all for joining today. So thanks for joining.
And we can upload the panel list.
And feel free to contact any of us if you have any further question, or if you want to join Gaia-X or one of its working streams. Thank you very much.